In this lecture, we are going to discuss about controller inheritance. We have slightly touched upon this subject at the start of the module. Now let's dig a little deeper to understand it. I'm going to start with properties first, which is quite complicated to understand, and then we will see methods inheritance. So I have my little controller inheritance HTML file. Let's see what's happening inside. So I have a div hierarchy here. The parent div element is controlled by the parent controller and the child div is controlled by child controller. My parent div is having two HTML elements, one label for parent controller's name and the text input element bound to the name property on parent scope. Child controller is also having the same elements, label for child controller's name and text input element bound to the name. Then I'm outputting the child controller's name and parent controller's name properties in a list. What's new inside this li element is $parent, and using it we can refer to the parent scope from the child scope. Then inside my parent controller I have initialized the name with John, and my child controller is empty, I mean nothing defined on $scope. So what do you think? What's gonna happen when I'm gonna run this application? I mean, what values will come here in this text input? John, right? As I have initialized it in the parent controller. And what about child controller's text input? What will come here? John or nothing? Then what about these curlies? What will go here? Okay, I think it's better to run and see. John. It seems John is everywhere. So what happened? We know John is going to come here for sure in my parent controller text input element, as we have defined its initial value to John here inside my controller. But we haven't defined name on my child controller, right? So this is what's happening inside. I mean, this name property is getting created on my child controller and it's getting its value from parent controller. And we are getting this child name in a list from this text input element. Then parent name from parent controller's text input, as we are referring parent scope using $parent object. Now, if I change this John in parent controller to say Jimmy, no surprise, right? It's getting rippled to child controller name text input as well as this li element. Now what's gonna happen if I change this name, I mean child controller's name, to say Andrew? As expected, child controller's name here in the list got changed. So you can see it's not impacting the parent controller's name. It's the same, Jimmy. I mean, that's somewhat expected. Now child is having its own name value redefined in controller. Now this can be tricky if I change the value of parent name. What's gonna happen? Will this child name change? Any guess? So I'm gonna change the value in parent controller text input. What's happening? Did you expect that the child name value will change? Yes or no? I think 70% of you will say yes. So what went wrong? As initially it was getting the value from parent and displaying it. Now what happened this time? Because we have redefined the value of name here inside this text input to Andrew. The link with the parent name has been broken and it's using the child name value. That's why we are getting Andrew here in child controller's name. And parent is having its own value as John. So this is what happens when we override primitive values from parent controller to child controller. I have one more HTML, but this time, instead of using the primitives, I'm using objects. So you can see instead of using name, I'm using vm.name to refer my model values. VM stands for view model. So the parent text input and child text input is having ng model of vm.name. And same vm.name I'm referring here in the list as well. Moving on to controllers, you can see I have defined vm.name on parent controller as John and my child controller is empty. Let's run, and as expected, Parent name is coming from parent vm.name, and as child is not having vm.name, it's getting it from parent scope. Now if I change the parent name, all names are changing. And if I change child name, whoops, what's happening? It's not redefining the child value, but changing the parent as well. You can see if I refresh my previous example into some name in parent, child is adapting the name. If I change it in child, nothing is happening. But it's redefining that value in child scope, and they are disconnected now even if I change the parent name value. That's why I said controller inheritance is a little tricky to understand, but we can use it as a feature. So when you want to have parent values to the child and you want them to be redefined, you can go with primitives value. And when you want parent and child values to be in sync, no matter where you change it, go for object syntax. Now, if you want to break the linking between child and parent, you can redefine this view model at start. Refresh, and there we go. I'm only getting the parent name as its name property is initialized at start. Now, if I change parent name, it's changing parent name. And if I change child name, it's changing child name only. Both are not in sync. I hope you understood the controller inheritance of properties and how it works.